Hello, and welcome to Heart and Mind. I'm Dr. Dina McMillan, and if I seem really excited today, I am. I admit it. Today, we are very fortunate to get to speak with Athena Clarke, who is one of the candidates for City Council in New York City. Ooh, this is going to be interesting. Because if you aren't aware of it, if you live in a part of the country or a part of the world that you're like, oh, New York, that they're different in there. No, what happens to New York, it's our largest, most important city, maybe sometimes even more so than Washington, depending on what's going on, because it's our business center, not our government center. So I'd say they're probably equal. And we need to keep a close eye on what's going on there. So thank you for joining me. Please let people know about this show because what we talk about here, you will not find anywhere else. I take all of the knowledge that I attained in the ivory tower and I break it down, simplify it, and bring it to you so you can use it in your everyday life. Now, we're live every Tuesday night Eastern Time at 8 p.m. However, if you aren't able to catch up with us live, you can also see the recorded versions of every episode on my feed on X, that's at Dr. Dina 1. You can find it on Rumble, you can find it on the Daily Clout site, and you can find it on YouTube. So don't miss an episode. And if you find something useful, keep in mind you can also share it with someone else, even if they aren't able to join us live. Now, if you are joining us live, can I ask, sign in on whatever platform you're watching the show, and then you can ask questions to me or to Miss Clarke when she joins us. Questions, make comments, find out information. It helps you participate in what we're doing. Now, if you've watched before, you know this, but most people don't know what a social psychologist is. That's my field of study. It's not like clinical psychology. We're not just looking to see who's neurotic or psychotic. What we study is how the brain works. We study power dynamics. We look at learning and influence and persuasion and manipulation, coercion, indoctrination, and brainwashing. And I see elements of all of this throughout my life. And I show you how to spot this. So it's like watching this show, you develop the ability to see an additional color on the spectrum. And that color is influence. That color is propaganda. That color is strings of manipulation being pulled. So this show helps you develop a superpower that you can take and use in your everyday life to protect yourself and your loved ones. Now, speaking of protecting yourself and your loved ones, please get your own copy of the Pfizer papers. It is so crucial for you to see what Pfizer and other companies like Pfizer, the big pharma, did during the COVID years, and it's not over. You'll notice as of the time of this broadcast, not a single person who locked us up, lied to us, were responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. No one has gone to jail yet. So no consequences means the probability of the behavior being repeated is very good. Pfizer went to court and tried to keep this information hidden for 75 years, and the court said no. So they opened up and just flooded whomever wanted to see it with huge amounts of paperwork, thinking, nobody's going to go through this. Well, Dr. Naomi Wolf, Amy Kelly, and the team of highly qualified MDs, PhDs, these are highly qualified people, went in, found the crucial information, translated it, simplified it, and brought it to you. And you getting your own copy of the book supports the work Daily Clout does, which is protecting our society from those who want to take advantage of us. So all of you, get your own copy of the Pfizer papers. Now, let's move to something that's so exciting. We have Athena Clarke here, who is doing everything she can to participate in the system in an attempt to try to save New York. She thinks it can be done. So we're going to ask her how and why. She has a common sense contract with New York that she wants to talk to us about. So it doesn't matter where you are. We all need to know this because everything that she's doing, we all need to replicate in whatever community we live in. The time for standing back and watching other people, letting other people take the risk and run society is over. They've proven we cannot trust them. We have to do this ourselves. So I'm hoping you'll stay with me. She'll be with us in a minute. What if I told you one of the most studied supplements in the world, creatine, isn't just for bodybuilders or men at the gym? That's one of the biggest myths out there. The truth is, creatine is incredibly beneficial for women, and you don't even have to exercise to feel the benefits. Here's why. Creatine helps your body produce quick energy. Yes, it supports lean muscle, strength, and recovery if you do work out. But research also shows it boosts brain health, improves memory, reduces mental fatigue, and even supports bone strength. That means better energy for your day, sharper thinking, and stronger aging, whether or not you ever step into the gym. And no, creatine will not make you bulky. That's another myth. What it will do is help you feel stronger, more energized, and more resilient in your everyday life. So if you've written off creatine as a guy thing, it's time to rethink it. Your body and your brain will thank you. If you'd like to learn more about how creatine works and why it's such a game changer for women, check out this short article at getnativecreatine.com/Daily Clout. That site again is GetNativecreatine.com/Daily Clout. So New York, New York. Now I mentioned before that my dad's military. So I spent part of my high school years in Germany, but I actually finished my high school in Brooklyn at Abraham Lincoln High School in Brooklyn. So I've lived in New York more than once. I have a very strong affinity for New York. It's like nowhere else. And for some reason, they've decided to commit cultural suicide. So right now, the front runner for mayor is a very unqualified Muslim socialist who is so inconsistent. The incongruencies around this man are enormous. He does not pass any type of smell test. He is photogenic, but that's the only good thing I can say about him. He's only lived in the United States for 7 years. He comes from a very wealthy family, yet when he put his hand up to run for mayor, I don't know if he still lives there, but he was living in rent-controlled housing, which is set aside for people who have economic issues. He had no compunctions about taking that away from the people of New York. So the real question I have, and you should be having, I don't care where you live, is New York about to become London? Because as London goes, the rest of the UK is absolutely feeling the effects of what has happened in London when they elected and re-elected a mayor who's very not as photogenic and significantly shorter, but mentally, ideologically is very much like the mayoral candidate, very much like Zohran Mamdani. I mean, is New York about to become London? I think Athena Clarke will say no. I just wanted to let you know before we speak to her, keep in mind, When I talk about the UK, another place that I've lived, another place I continue to do business, in 2023, 12,183 people were arrested in the UK for social media posts deemed offensive. None of these people were Muslim or ethnic of any kind. None of them were black or brown or anything. All of these were whites who looked at what was going on to their society and said, I don't like this. Lucy Connolly put a post up incredibly angry when she saw how a murderer of small girls was being treated with kid gloves. And she put an angry post up about immigration in the migrant hotels. And she realized within an hour or so that's not good. So she took it down and they still put her in jail for 31 months, where people who are committing rape and even murder are not getting sentences like this in the UK. The UK is lost because how did it happen? They sacrificed London. Are we going to sacrifice New York? So, welcome to the stage. Hello, Miss Clarke. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm so excited to have you here. I'm so thrilled to see you running as a Republican. I've read up on you. You are an exciting candidate.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You
I believe this is just the beginning for you
think so? I
politically.
get that a lot.
No, you would, because all of us, people who sat back, I mean, really, this is very, in a way, it echoes Trump. Trump was very satisfied being a billionaire businessman.
hmm
He saw the direction our country was going in and said, I can't just stand back. And he has sacrificed more than most people, years of lies, humiliation, lawfare, just everywhere he goes, threats,
Yeah,
assassination attempts,
yeah,
and he's still there. And he's in the
yeah.
White House going, he's, I mean, I don't normally say bad words, but I think a bad word is apt here. He's just as badass as he thinks he is.
He is.
And
He is. And he's
he's an
himself through and through.
inspiration. He's an inspiration to us all. Um, he because he if he could go into the fray and he didn't have an easy way of it, he's not like the Democrats who can have backgrounds that are horrible
Yeah,
and then you just wipe over them. If you look at Biden, the stuff he did and said, and they're calling Trump a racist. So you go in as a Democrat, you look at Mamdani, his background, he should never be allowed to run for mayor of New York.
agreed.
He should actually not even be allowed. He lied about his on his citizenship papers. He should be tossed out. And yet he is the front runner because he's going as a Democrat.
Yeah.
We have got to stop this. This two-tiered system is horrible. Now, you are in District 46 in Brooklyn.
hmm
There are so many good things about Brooklyn. If you haven't been to New York, people, you need to go. So I brought Athena here because she has something called a common sense contract. Unlike most politicians who are talking about, Mamdani is up there saying, we're going to raise taxes on everybody who makes money. We're going to make white people uncomfortable. So basically, they're going to take the financial base of New York and make them leave.
Basically,
You
ultimately. Yes.
you made 7 pledges to restore integrity, that's my magic word, safety and accountability to New York. So let's walk us through. What made you decide to put your hand up?
Okay. Well, one thing with the common sense contract, it is actually an individual named Steve. I hope I don't butcher his last name. Gilliam. He runs
Mhm.
something called Project Civica, and he actually decided to gather up the different candidates running for office, and we came together and made this common sense contract. So it's not just myself; it's several of us who have it on our website, and it's supposed to be something that is common sense. It's supposed to be bipartisan. It's supposed to unite party lines. It should be come from a place where anyone walking down the street will see these 7 pledges and say, oh, I can't agree with that. I want that in my community too. So it's not an Athena Clarke thing, even though I did sign off on it and I completely agree with it, but it's something that we came up with together.
Well, that's nice to know because we need it. Any great idea needs to be spread. And I have to interject here and say, for me, the old-fashioned Democrat, it might have been bipartisan. We had old-fashioned Democrats, and Fetterman in Washington. He's an old-fashioned Democrat. He stands out like a sore thumb in many ways. The weird clothes, the whole thing. But he's in a time warp. He's like a Democrat from 40 years ago, where they were actually looking out for their constituents.
Yes. Unlike now. Yeah.
So it's going to be hard to do bipartisan anything when you have people who are told anything you do is wrong because you're doing it, not because of what you say.
Yes. So it's funny that you mentioned it. This is off topic, but it just happened today. And so I have these, you put up your posters and your lawn signs so you can get the advertisements so people can see you and research who you are. And one of my friends showed me something on Instagram, and in Canarsie on Seaview Avenue, I have these little lawn signs, and someone went and took bumper stickers and it says MAGA Republican, and they started sticking them all over my lawn signs in Canarsie. And I actually thought it was a little funny. And then I was like, it's amazing that the only thing we can do is name call in terms of running for office, right? My opponent, Mercedes Narcisse, and the other Democrats that are running aren't actually campaigning at this moment in time. It's just us Republicans, boots on the ground, that's doing this. And the only thing that they thought of doing right now is putting up bumper stickers that say MAGA Republican. And me running Republican isn't a secret. It's right there. It's out in the open. When I speak to constituents, when you go on my website, when you go on my Instagram, it says Republican right there. So it's amazing how they try to divide us and just keep you into these little cliques of being, oh, you're a Democrat, only Democrat, oh, you're Republican, only Republican, instead of trying to bridge that gap.
I actually had similar when I did a show a few weeks ago in honor of Charlie Kirk, whom I found a lot of the things he said uncomfortable because he was speaking harsh home truths, which I believe in. I'm a facts, not feelings kind of gal. So I am completely alienated from my family.
Oh.
I should say my siblings. My siblings are so angry with me. Some of them have been angry with me since like 2010, when I actually told them why I don't follow the left progressive narrative, why my science says that it's not valid, it's not true, it's self-destructive, it's other destructive, and you can't dispute me by calling me names. You want me to change my mind, bring me some facts and let me look up the methodology. And because they couldn't do that, some of them got really angry. One of my sibs stopped talking to me. And now I had one go on the site on Facebook where I was posting about the Charlie Kirk show. Oh, she's a rabid Republican. And I had another old friend from high school saying, oh, I'd like to watch the show. And your dad must be really proud you're doing all of this stuff, because he recognized that a lot of what Charlie Kirk said about Black people was valid, but hard to hear if you're not used to it.
And it is hard to hear. It is.
But it wasn't racist. It was factual. We have a toxic urban culture that we need to fix. But he looked at that, and an old high school friend said, I'm sure your dad would be very proud of me, proud of you. And I'm sure he would too. My dad passed away. The last thing he told me was that he was proud of me and that he loved me. He was a facts, not feelings kind of guy too, okay? And then this one sibling came on and just tried to talk this guy out of watching the show, out of providing support, calling me a rabid Republican, all on my site, because she didn't like the fact that people were actually
supporting
and interested enough and saw that it requires acknowledging fault in your own groups. I mean, I'm a woman as well. A
Yep.
lot of the stuff women are getting up to as a group, the feminist movement, has been an absolute disaster.
Yes, it has. And the destruction of women as a whole.
Oh, absolute disaster. We cannot fix something we will not acknowledge is broken. So to have my sibling come on my Facebook page and try to turn people against me,
That's
calling me a rabid Republican, and I was like, that is so wrong. I don't do that to you. You are this left progressive. I don't only not only disagree with what you believe in, I think it's not only wrong, a lot of it is evil.
yes.
I would never go on her side or try to turn people against her because she doesn't share my beliefs.
Mm,
The kind of behavior that just and that double standard, if I did that to her, she'd be appalled
yeah.
because they are not used to being held accountable.
No.
So we
And that's
all
what
have
it
to
is.
put our
Yeah.
we have to put our hands up. So let's go through your pledges and give you a chance to talk about it. Oh, as I said, they know me. Naomi knows me. She knew I would just think you were just the bee's knees. So here we go. Okay. Pledge one, illegal immigration, repeal sanctuary city status.
Hmm.
And what do you think about that?
So one of the main things that has happened, especially during COVID and when Biden came in office, was, Mayor Adams volunteered New York to be a sanctuary city. And that came at the detriment of citizens, ultimately. Your average person in New York is very expensive. So your average person can't make ends meet. They're literally living paycheck to paycheck. However, we don't get the same resources that they were able to give to illegal immigrants, right? And you say that and it's like, "Oh my gosh, you're against illegal immigrants." My parents are from Jamaica, so I'm a first generation American. So I understand having to migrate and find a better life. However, we don't know who we're letting into our city. We don't know what if they're fleeing because they committed a crime. We have no idea who's here. And then they got, placed in 5-star hotels. They were able to receive medical care, free Medicare. They got food stamps. They got all these different vouchers while the people who are here who are barely making $30,000, who have a child, they're not able to get food stamps. And it's not fair. And then you're talking about overcrowding and all those things. And it's like, not to sound cliche, but take care of your citizens first, right? Take care of your house first before you go and branch out to help other people. There's no kind of checks and balances here. And everything that they do now is all for illegal immigrants. They spent over $1 billion in New York on illegal immigrants. And I don't know, I ask around and no one knows the last time they seen anything from the city to help support them. And it's really interesting because so part of the reason why I'm running is because I was a teacher and I was tenured and I got terminated for refusing the COVID vaccine. And at that time, if you weren't vaccinated, you couldn't enter a school building. So that goes even for parents. Parents weren't able to go into the building to pick up their children. If they weren't vaccinated, they have to show their vaccine card. At one point in time, right here, they shut down a high school, James Madison High School, to allow the illegal immigrants to stay there. I think there was supposed to be a storm or something. Don't know if they were vaccinated, don't know their vaccine status. And the students had to go remote the next day in order to house those illegal immigrants. And it just shows, again, when you speak about the double standard, it's, oh, we have so many resources for illegal immigrants, but we have absolutely nothing for our citizens who have helped build this city. And a lot of people are frustrated, including myself, with what's going on.
Well, I would say also because social psychology, as I said, most people don't yet know what social psychology is. I often have a slide on when I talk about social psychology. I had a brain now, but I often have a slide with like an evil scientist because a lot of what we do is used for evil. And the left progressive movement since the 1960s has been using knowledge of how to indoctrinate people
Yeah.
to influence the public, Western society to be suicidal in its outlook. And when you learn, because expertise is layered knowledge, as you learn more, you realize it's not just what was said and done, it was what wasn't said and done. You so rarely ever see anything that discusses the cost of illegal immigration on any place where they live. They will just not talk about it.
Yeah.
You're immediately called a bigot. You're immediately called narrow-minded. They don't want people to recognize what we've all been paying for years, for decades, by allowing people to illegally invade our nation. These people, most of them never assimilate.
No.
They don't even acculturate. And my audience knows that as a military brat, and I've continued the tradition living in 5 countries. During COVID, I was in Australia. And Australia has ruined itself. It's like the UK. It was such a vibrant, wonderful country, filled itself with hostile immigrants who completely cheat the system, where the average Australian is doing it so tough.
Yes.
And you're never allowed to talk about it. You're never, when I was in Australia, I worked for one of the states, the main state where Sydney is called New South Wales. I worked for their law enforcement for more than a decade. And there were horrible statistics on domestic violence and sexual assault by men from developing country cultures. And they hid the data because they didn't want the average Australian to know. They were rewarding the average Australian for being like, we welcome refugees, and, we don't hate, love, not hate, and all that kind of stuff. They were being rewarded for that, not recognizing that they were letting people live in their country who were determined to destroy them, who were robbing the system, who were taking entitlements they shouldn't have been able to get, who were crowding their schools and crowding their hospitals and crowding their neighborhoods, driving up housing prices. Mm-hmm. Most people are never allowed to know this. And I mean, you watching, you may not have ever thought about it. How much do they really cost? Yeah. And people like me, I was running into trouble back at Stanford in graduate school because I decided even then I was going to be a facts, not feelings kind of social psychologist. And they wanted me to go left progressive, and I refused. I said, if I do that, and I'm willing to look at issues on all sides. Yeah. My objectivity is how I remain a scientist and not an advocate.
Yes. So and we need more scientists like you.
And we also need to know what everything costs. And like with immigration, I think nobody should be allowed in without a cost benefit analysis. What are they bringing in? And what are they costing the system? Simple.
Yeah, let's do this. With the amount of immigrants that we do have now, they kind of need to put it on pause.
No. I'm a real remigration kind of woman. Yeah. I think if you have moved to the United States, you don't speak English, Australia too, because I still love Australia. I lived there longer than anywhere else. If you've been there for more than 5-10 years, you don't speak English. I was getting my hair done, because you can see I have braids. I was getting my hair done by some African women, and they'd lived in Australia for, when the Australian women, in Australia, it was only Africans. You can get a lot of different people. Black American women do it in the States, but in Australia, it was African women who were doing my hair. And all of them had lived in Australia for more than a decade. And when I was in their shop, it was like I was in Africa. They had not acculturated even slightly to the fact that they lived somewhere else. So that means all of the customs, all of the animosities, all of the limitations of that third world nation they came from, they brought with them. And they were teaching it to their children. So the issues last generations.
Yeah.
We not just pause immigration. We need to remigrate people. We need to get people, not just the illegals. We need to send people back. We need America to benefit America, all the Western nations. need to benefit their own people first. And here's another thing, fellow Black person, an issue that Charlie Kirk would talk about, and a lot of Black people got upset. Oh, he's a racist. No, he's got the statistics. He's like, check it on the FBI website, He's absolutely right. Restore law and order.
Yeah.
We cannot. The way the Democrats have allowed any place where they're in charge to allow criminals to overrun. How does that help anybody?
It doesn't. I don't know if they're doing a social experiment as to how far they can go, but it's appalling what they've allowed to happen. And people need to speak up a little bit more. So when you think about crime, right here in New York, you have repeat offenders who get away with committing crimes over and over again. And also, it's not only the crime, but it's like two pieces. So you have repeat offenders, and then you also strip rights away from NYPD to be able to enforce the law. So it's like a double-edged sword that it was a tactic basically that they used to attack, how people feel. Once upon a time in New York, I speak for Brooklyn, there were certain areas that you knew, like, okay, that's not so safe, but this is a safer neighborhood. And nowadays, you don't even have that anymore. No neighborhood is exempt from the crime, from the lawlessness. And city council, which is what I'm running for, they've been stripping powers away from NYPD, peeling at them for years. And it's been in little increments, but now you see how it all adds up. So at first it was like, oh, okay, we're not going to, public urination isn't a crime anymore. Drinking alcohol outside isn't, such a big crime anymore. And then it was, okay, now jaywalking used to be illegal. My opponent, Mercedes Narcisse, legalized jaywalking, which was a tool that police officers would use, if they had probable cause to stop someone. That, again, is something that's no longer being done. So these little bits and pieces get stripped away slowly but surely. And then you're in a situation like this and you're just like, what happened? And then also, I've mentioned before, being terminated because of COVID. A lot of our officers, good officers, either retired if they had the years because they didn't want to take the shot, or they just left because they didn't want to take the shot. So NYPD hasn't been able to recover the amount of police officers that it would take to even run the force effectively. So you have all these little pieces like a jigsaw puzzle coming together that continues to feed why the crime is on the rise. And then, as you said, as a fellow Black person, their favorite thing to say is there's over policing in our neighborhoods. And that's all they use. So now it's like, oh, well, we don't like the police. But Black people, we know the deal, right? We know where the crime is happening. We know who's committing the crime. But no one wants to say these things out loud because then you're seen as the enemy. And no one wants to speak the actual truth. Speaking the truth hurts feelings. It causes offense. And we need to be truthful in our approach and stop letting people who aren't living in our neighborhoods say to us, oh, there's over policing in this neighborhood, there's over policing in that neighborhood, and not providing any solutions. If there's over policing, then what do you suggest? What are you going to implement to substitute for the over policing if you're going to remove police from the equation?
Well, also being willing to look at the statistics and looking at the criminal behavior. And there's too much violence and too much crime in Black areas. I know, as somebody who moves around a lot, I look for Martin Luther King Boulevard.
Yes,
and then I choose a neighborhood as far as possible from Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Okay. I know, no, I don't want to live around criminals. I've lived in so many areas. As I said, London, Paris, New York, Sydney. I mean, I've lived in all these different areas. I am not used to living around the criminal element. Okay. Mm-hmm. And until we do something, we need to get all the Black people who are in any situation, position of influence. And I'm not talking about traditional Black leadership because they profit too much out of stirring up trouble and keeping Black people oppressed. I have always said to Black people, stop making racism rational.
Yeah.
And you know, Jennifer Eberhardt is a social psychologist. She's a professor at Stanford University. That's my alma mater. That's where I got my doctorate. And she has a book called Biased. And if audience, if you haven't read it, it's really good. And even she, who has to be careful, not because she's necessarily left wing, but because if you seem conservative at all, if you actually identify facts, you are often targeted by the left
Yeah.
and you can lose your job. But even she was talking about police officers in Oakland, California, moving from another country and not having any feelings about Black people whatsoever, except that although Black people are less than 20% of the population, 80% of the time when they're going out over the radio to report a criminal, the description is male Black, male Black, male Black. And as somebody who teaches about bias, your brain is going to learn from that information. And as long as we keep meeting the stereotype, we are going to be in trouble. It doesn't matter how many opportunities we have. So I want to get together with Black leadership and see, because again, social psychology, that evil science, but it can be used for good. I want to see what we can do to change our culture, because there's no reason our culture has to be like that. But right now, we are so overrepresented with regard to crime, and with violent crime, it's through the roof.
Yes.
You're like, oh, somebody's a racist, doesn't want to be near us. I don't blame them. I don't want to live near you either. Chris Rock was talking about this. He's like,
Yes.
I'm standing at an ATM. I'm not looking for white folks. I'm looking for bleeps. Okay.
But you know what? The funny thing is so you and I can have that conversation together. But as soon as a white person says it, they're racist. And that's what we need to change as a culture. And even for myself, right? Someone said something the other day and I got offended. I didn't say anything and I was just like, but then I said the same thing to my friend and to my sisters, 20 minutes before. So it was like, I had to check myself for a minute, like, Athena, like, that's just the truth. And I was asking my best friend and she's like, yes, sometimes I have to, push down my liberal thoughts and really just think about what the facts are. And because we are connected, right, to our roots, that's why we get offended by it, because it feels like, oh, you're picking on me. But it's like, no, we're not picking on you. We're just calling it as we see it. And we've been, for whatever reason, conditioned to think that if another culture or another race calls it out, it's racist. And no, it's not racist. The truth is the truth. And we have to be comfortable with addressing the truth at the root, instead of just pointing the finger like, oh, you're racist, we're oppressed.
Well, one thing I found is, because I am willing to admit the truth, but I always, whenever anybody that watches Heart and Mind knows, whenever I discuss a problem, I also move on to some solutions. I'm very solution focused. So when I look at the problems, for instance, in the Black community, I look at it and say, oh, this is terrible. How do we fix this? And because I'm willing to address issues in my own groups, I gain a lot of trust from people who aren't in my group.
Okay.
They would not trust me if I were just, oh, anytime you say something that's factual, and the kind of people who will kowtow to somebody who's easily offended, like some of my siblings who get these people that are like, that's not what they think at all. That's not how they vote.
Mm-hmm.
It is superficial. It is phony.
Yes.
People can be honest with me. I'm actually followed by some people that I would say do not like Black people. I'm probably the only Black person they ever followed, and they didn't even think they would follow me, except I'm about one thing Charlie said that I agree with wholeheartedly. I'm an old-fashioned kind of Black person, content of your character kind of person.
Yeah.
Not color of your skin. You look at my skin color and you can tell, first of all, I'm looking at you, thinking you're such a beautiful color, and I'm looking and thinking, I've been spending way too much time on my computer. I'm looking a little pale. Okay. However, you just know that some of my relatives came from a hot environment. That doesn't tell you anything. What is my character? If we judge each other that way, we will have such a strong country. But the
Yeah.
character counts. And I don't get an excuse because I face discrimination, because I grew up poor, because, no. So we have to restore law and order. Law and order hurts Black people most because it keeps our communities oppressive and it keeps racism rational. And there's nothing the Democrats like more than Black people being oppressed. So let's
Yes.
go on to your pledge three, economic freedom. Oh my God, I'm a small business owner. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, let's reduce some of those burdensome regulations. Yeah.
Yes, and lower some of the costs. I've been speaking to small business owners, and a lot of them are getting fines for the silliest of things. One of the small business owners in the corner store says he gets fines for not having paper straws. And I'm just like, what? And he said, and it comes with as a fine, not a warning, just a fine, like, hey, here's your ticket. I met someone else, their rent per month in Canarsie, Brooklyn, not Midtown Manhattan, was $15,000 a month. And I was just like, I couldn't, like, I thought he made a mistake. Like, I thought I heard incorrectly. And I was like, I'm sorry, can you say that again? How much is your rent? Because I was expecting him to go back and say, oh, my rent is $5,000. And he said it again, $15,000. And then I knew he was telling the truth because someone else that I know who has a small business, her rent is $10,000 a month to own a storefront. And this is crushing small businesses. And a lot of people have not recovered economically after COVID. And I bring up COVID a lot because I know for a fact people don't put those pieces together. It's, as I meet people, it's like a mind fog. It's like, that happened. And I have to go back and say, you don't remember this? You don't remember the lockdowns? You don't remember the stores closing? You remember you couldn't go to the movies? You couldn't go to the restaurants? If you didn't show a card, people had to sit outside. They still had to pay their rents. And everyone is like, yeah, I do remember. That did happen. And I'm like, and we're 5 years later, and we're still dealing with those consequences. And these small businesses, you walk throughout the neighborhood, shutters down, close. And they're not even, people can't even open businesses because, again, the rents are sky high and the revenue is not coming in. And then when you add crime to some of these small businesses, like your mom and pop shops where people just come in, they can take, what they want and walk out your store. You tie all these things together. Once again, you have failing businesses. Failing businesses also lead to failing neighborhoods because there's no property taxes coming in for the schools, for the neighborhood. And it's like a perpetual cycle that's going on and on and on.
Well, I'm glad you're working on this because you do understand people. We're still paying for COVID in so many ways. And it's one of the reasons I'm glad that Naomi and Amy are really pushing the Pfizer papers. We need the whole socialist, their manifesto is about people not owning the sources of production. So they want the government to own everything. So one of the things they do is try to destroy small business, and they destroy it both through regulations and the things they're doing, and you're right, and through crime. Who wins when you're able to get away from crime? And here's another way that they get away with things. If you look, when Black Lives Matter was causing so much ruckus, not a single dollar went to improve education in predominantly Black areas.
Nope.
Most Black areas across the country do not have any students, or a tiny proportion of students, that are reading and doing math at appropriate grade level.
Yeah.
And this has been going on it was like this when I was young. So we're talking about the Stone Age, okay? It was a long time ago. It was still like that. In fact, my parents, when I was 7, my parents moved us out of a predominantly Black neighborhood we integrated an all-white neighborhood. It was a working class neighborhood, but it was Irish Catholic, and sent us to Catholic school in an Irish Catholic neighborhood because they wanted us to get a decent education. And of course, later on, I go to, university, graduate school, and I find out that that's one of the ways to leapfrog over the poor education in, you know, poverty stricken areas, whether they're minority or not, is to
Yeah.
send kids to Catholic school.
Yeah.
It's because they can't afford, $75,000 a year tuition for a private school, but you
It's a
can afford
lot.
to go to Catholic school.
Yeah.
You need to be able to choose where your kids go to school. They are allowing these really poor teachers, they're not teaching basic discipline. People will follow who wins. And when bullying and violence are allowed to win, when they're allowed to dominate an environment, then the lesson to all the observers is follow that.
Yeah.
And that's how Charlie Kirk was able to gain. It took him a decade, but he was able to gain such a huge and influential audience, not from the people he was debating with so
Mm.
much. Very rarely would those people admit that they were wrong.
But the
But the
people
people
listening.
watching,
Yeah.
the people watching were seeing this guy sitting there calmly presenting verifiable facts, saying, look it up. You've got a smartphone, look it up. I'm not making this up. This is what's going on. And the other person, as soon as they get flustered because they're experiencing cognitive dissonance, because they're not used to anybody doing anything but repeating the approved narrative. So it
Yeah.
causes them not only psychological, but also even physical pain to
Yeah.
have somebody disagree with them. And so they react and they get emotional and they start name calling and they start threatening, and it's what got him killed. They could not debate him, so they killed him. So we see this all the time, but people follow winners. When he was seen to actually win those debates, he gained new followers. When we see education become a priority and nobody can compete like Black folks,
Yeah.
we start getting some opportunities and we're taught the strategy. Like if you look at the Asian students actually have a strategy for studying that makes them really effective at taking standardized tests. We need to replicate that.
Mm-hmm.
We need to say, we don't need your DEI. We need a strong program where we're held accountable for both our academics and our emotional outbursts. We are
Yeah.
responsible for our behavior 24/7. We need we need teachers who believe in us. You've seen the studies. You're a teacher. You've seen those studies that when they told the teacher that the kids were gifted, by the end of
Mm-hmm.
the year, nearly half the kids actually tested gifted and they were average students.
Yes. Because they have someone to believe in them. And you learn that too, depending on your school, right? To give the kids something to rise to. You have to have the bar and have them, don't lower your standards, but raise the standards for the kids to grow and to, come and meet you where you are. And a lot of times we lower the standards and we keep them boxed in, right? You have to go to your zone school. If you live in a poverty stricken neighborhood, like we just finished discussing, then you have to deal with the crime, you have to deal with the behaviors of bullying and the fighting in the schools. And these kids are bright and things are done strategically, even with reading, right? Half of our kids are not reading on grade level. And that's not even a Black thing, it's just across the board. All the kids in New York City, half of them are reading at grade level, about 47%, because our schools are failing. And it's not, you give parental choice, you get to send them to charter schools, right? Or if they get vouchers, they get to go to private schools. However, if you would just get rid of zoning as a whole, which has been a detriment to the communities for years, and you allow parents to break those kids up. If you have a bunch of students, a bunch of children who's grown up in a certain way, so in a certain neighborhood, their entire lives, you put them in a school, then that's what they know. But if you split those kids up and you send them, like you said, you follow the leadership, right? You follow what the standards is. So those same kids, you put the same 5 kids in one school and then you put them in a higher school and their behaviors change. But if you just keep putting them in the same places where they don't get to see anything different, their environment doesn't change, then that's what they do. And I think that's why zoning is so detrimental to the community, to our children. And it's not fair. My parents did the same thing as your parents did. They moved us out when I was 6 to Mill Basin, which was a predominantly white neighborhood back then. Now it's way more diverse. But I was like one of 4 Black students. I went to public school still because they couldn't afford the private school. But because of, again, the property tax and the kind of neighborhood it was, I had a great education for the most part and went on to college and everything, like my sisters as well. All 3 of us did.
Well, I look at the facts. I grew up with my father's military, enlisted. We were broke. Oh my God. We had no money. Kids used to make fun of us because we weren't well dressed, because my parents had to choose. If they had to choose between clothes and books, they chose books.
Oh, yeah.
And I look at the fact that I was the second Black person to get a PhD in my department since the 70s.
Oh, wow.
I faced such discrimination. Oh my God. But I was like, no. Again, my mother taught us Black American history before we went to school. So when she said, you fight ignorance with knowledge. So when we went in this old white neighborhood and they said, you people haven't done anything, we were the little smart Alex sitting in front of the class, raising our hands and saying, the first man to die in the Revolutionary War, Crispus Attucks, was a Black man. And we would just cite the stuff, always teacher's pet, always in the front of the class.
Your teachers loved you.
We came to learn. But during that time, as there was a white flight, because a lot of white people were like, we don't want Black people in our neighborhood. So people started moving out and Black families started moving in from the ghetto. They were the ones that hassled us, not the white students. We have to fix our culture.
That's going to be a hard fix.
It
can't be done, but we need more people like yourself.
We got to speak up, and we've got to basically really be honest and show us what we lose by staying the way we are. Yeah. Now, I want to get on to, because we're talking about parents and what our parents did for us to keep us from having to deal with some of the detrimental effects of our current culture. Parental rights, this whole thing, especially with the gender ideology, with abortion, with sex ed, with the promotion of LGBTQ, with teaching young people that it is boring to be heterosexual. We have these uber left people taking over our schools and indoctrinating our children. And
a lot of people are trying to homeschool their kids now because of it. It's true.
The good news is we now have a president and people in charge. And I am so, God, I was heartsick when I saw that they killed Charlie. But one thing about his martyrdom, it made a lot of people, it didn't make people say, oh gosh, I shouldn't do that, I might get hurt. They were like, we're stepping into place. We got this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I get upset because the courage this man showed. Again, we need the harsh home truths. And since when can Black people not take tough information? We just have to get people willing to go toe to toe. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to go toe to toe. And like I said, my sisters don't talk to me because they know if they argue with me and I start bringing the facts, they can't argue facts with left-wing narratives that have no basis. I spent 7 of my 9 years of college learning how to read research methodology. So when you bring me a study that says this, okay, I go to the methodology page and said, I look at it and say, if I had methodology that's shoddy, I never would have graduated. Here are the flaws in how they did this study. Let's look at something that actually has some basis.
Yeah.
So, but we need parental rights. Those are your kids. Now, this is another reason you and I were talking about the issues with feminism. Not even just feminism. We need to get parents to become more actively involved with their children. Take those devices away. Read them books, read stories with them. Stop letting strangers raise your kids. And see, in a place like New York, that's another thing they do. When they make cost of living so high,
Parents have to
Because
work. They can't be at
parents
home.
have to work every hour God sends, which means other people are raising their children and they're able to indoctrinate those children. And what did Malcolm X say? Only a fool will let his enemy teach his children.
It's so it's amazing to see. And speaking of like gender ideology, even in the libraries, not necessarily in my particular district, but there's a library and there's like a back room, and that's where they will teach like the gender ideology, and parents aren't allowed to go in the room. They tell the parents they have to stay outside and the kids go inside. And it was my friend, because she looks really young, and she and her son, they look like brother and sister pretty much. So she was like, I'm going in this room. Like there wasn't anywhere blocking the door. And she said when she went in the room, she was so shocked at the things that she saw that was available, the pamphlets about changing your gender and LGBTQ, the whole alphabet and everything like that. And she was just like, what is going on? And this is in the library. Certain schools in the city, certain places in the city, they have drag queen story hour. And it's because there's no transparency in the schools. And that's why we talk about parental rights. Parents need to stand up. If they don't say anything, then they just get to continue pushing this narrative until it's too late. And now is the time for parents to rise up and say, no, 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 we don't want this in our schools. My child could learn about this later on in life. I literally had this conversation earlier today, and I said, when I was growing up, I didn't learn about being a lesbian or being gay, or, we called it cross dressing before it became a whole transgender thing. I just learned to be tolerant of people and be respectful of people's choices. And that's all we need to teach our kids, to be tolerant, to be respectful to other individuals. And
I have
that's
to
it.
disagree with you there. Anybody that follows me knows tolerance is a bad word to me.
Tolerant,
Um, no, I don't
respectful,
believe. I believe no. No. I believe in being civil.
civil. Okay, be civil, not to
Being
be a
civil, but
bully.
not being. The tolerance is what got us here.
I
Anytime
don't
somebody,
being
anytime
complicit is
somebody,
what got us here, but
but anytime somebody has a belief system that's different than yours, it behooves you to actually think about how is this going to affect me and mine,
mm,
because we all impact each other. And if you think it's going to be a destructive, then you have to do something about it. You have to say no. I know this is radical, but I look at the progression of society and how society has gotten to this point where they're about to elect a Muslim socialist who wants to tax wealthy New Yorkers and tax white people separately. How do we get to this point? It happens a step at a time. It
it just
doesn't happen.
happens at a time. But
I don't believe in persecuting people. I don't believe in being mean and rude to people. Um, but I do believe in having values. And for me, as I said, tolerance is too often putting up with something that is actually impacting you and your loved ones. And you feel like you're obligated not to say anything. You're obligated to go along with it. And I don't think it's too dangerous to do that. We have to say, no, I don't want my children learning about this until they're older. No, I
that's
don't
what I
accept
meant. I didn't necessarily mean
I don't
toleration,
I don't accept
just
I don't
being
accept
respectful.
those values as being I don't you telling me that that's equal to this. I don't believe that. That goes against my values. Now you can believe all you want. I'm not going to mistreat you because of it, but no, because I want you to notice something else. The people who are left progressive have no compunctions about telling us how wrong we are, about telling us how bad we are, how what we believe is actually wrong and shouldn't be allowed to be voiced. They have no compunctions about telling us, but we're supposed to allow a double standard that I just think is so dangerous. Just hold them accountable. Anything that says parents aren't allowed and you're teaching my kids, uh-uh. Again, those are indoctrination centers. It
Yeah,
scares me. It scares
definitely.
me. I love this too. Of course, as I said, I loved every single thing about this. Okay, you're a genius coming up with this and going. And I salute you for your bravery again?
Oh, thank you. It was
Because I
just
know
kind
what
of
our community is like. You even saying that you're a Republican, you're gonna feel some heat. See, a lot of white people think, oh, they're like, oh, you're a Republican. We get cursed out and called names. Okay, we get threatened. Um,
honestly, for personally, when I said no to the shot, I feel like that was enough for me. So someone said to me the other day, "Oh, you're going to get canceled." And I'm like, I got canceled 4 years ago when I said no.
um,
When I said no, I'm like, I'm like, they took my career from me. So at this point, I have nothing to lose. I literally have nothing to lose, and I can tell my truth and what it is unapologetically. So I don't consider it bravery, but thank you. To me, bravery was what I did 4 years ago under the scrutiny of saying, you can't work if you don't take this shot, knowing that New York is so expensive and you have to work. And to me, it's just
well,
something that had to be done.
I expect to see you. Can I say before we finish up? Because we still, I don't care if we run over. Okay, I want to know everything you have to say. So the local control. I also expect to see you running for mayor at some point. Now, local control, amplify community voices. Thank you. Because so often, what is done in neighborhoods, they do not allow the people in that neighborhood that are impacted by those policies to have a say. It's
Well,
some backroom deal that the politicians put together, some, hand holding and I would say in some cases, quid pro quo,
mm-hmm.
offshore friendliness, Cayman Island friendliness going on that we don't get to
Even
see.
when they have community input, they still find a way because, um, speaking of this, there is a homeless shelter that they're bringing into what that they're trying to bring into the community, and it was agreed upon with the constituents that it should be affordable housing. And all of a sudden it got changed to, oh no, it's going to be a homeless shelter, and that's not what they agreed on.
There's so much danger associated with that.
And it's right across the street from a projects.
There's so much danger associated with that because people who are chronically homeless, most of them have serious mental health issues. Then
Typically,
you add the addiction issues and everything else. I I am empathetic and sympathetic to a point, but I was
yeah.
also one way I was trained is to see flow out and flow on. That's something else social psychology does. So I'm sympathetic to you, but not to, which is why I said I'm not tolerant. I'm sympathetic to you, but not to the extent I'm willing to hurt everybody else to help you. So we've got to keep going till we find a solution that if I want to help you, I'd like to help you, but not at the cost of everyone else. I'm just not
Yeah.
going to do it. So, yeah. And here we go, fiscal accountability. Do they even know what this is? Okay. Because we have to be accountable. We small business owners, we have to account for every little dollar that we spend, everything. And thank goodness Biden is gone, because I
Yeah.
just thought the 87,000 additional IRS people looking at everybody's account if you got more than $600 was
What is six
just,
hundred dollars? What
and
is
while
six
at the
hundred
same
dollars?
time, there's no accountability for all of that money supposedly going to the Ukraine.
Okay.
That's actually a money laundering operation for him and all of his friends.
For
Nobody's
all the
looking
things
at
he's
that.
been doing over the years as well, and his son. But you're
And
checking
this
my
conversation
little
got
Chase
up to,
account.
oh my God. The problem I worry about is that if, in order to stay Democrat, you have got to be increasingly willfully blind. And it is
So
going to be really hard to get these people to open their
it's
eyes again.
it's funny that you mentioned that. So I have the opposite where my sisters actually joined me on this ride of,
Oh,
becoming,
yay.
yes, becoming Republican, and it's it's so reassuring to have them. I have pushback from my mom, and not in a way where we don't speak, because we absolutely refuse to let the government split us, as a family unit. But we're Christian, but we grew up Pentecostal. And I say to my mom, I'm like, how can you be Christian and still a Democrat in this day and age? Like, how? And the only thing that she says is the same thing that everyone says. I just can't support Trump. And I'm like, he's not the
Please tell
entire
her
party.
that when I come to Brooklyn and I meet your mom, I'm going to be able to actually explain to her how the people who didn't want Trump to gain power because he was an outsider and because he was so wealthy he couldn't be bought, how they used very distinct tactics. I could even teach a course in this, how they used very distinct tactics to make the world hate Trump.
Please
Because
do.
he was very popular in the Black community.
He was on the Fresh
Until
Prince.
he ran for president. Black people have got to stop being cat's paws for, the virtue signaling lefty white people with an agenda. All
And
that you
that's
have
where
to
it
use,
always comes from.
you use the R word. Oh, he's a racist. And then you stop listening. You know what? I have studied people like Robert E. Lee. I have studied like Ernst Rommel. I mean, these are people who were actually the enemy. And I'm looking at who these people were and I'm examining it because I have to get my mind and body comfortable with cognitive dissonance. I have to get used to that discomfort, that initial reaction you have when your mind feels afraid. It triggers a fear response. I will be able to point out to your mother, how getting her to hate Trump was a tactic to get her to turn off her brain. There is no Christian who should support a party that is also supported by the Satanists, that is also at the Democratic National Conference when they have an abortion. They had some sort of little, what do you call it, trailer. They had like a trailer outside for offering free abortions at the Democrat National Conference.
That's so
How
sad.
can you be a Christian and support this? Who do the Satanists support?
Yeah.
Who do the lawless people support? Who do the people who live their lives completely antithetical to biblical principles? Which party do they support?
Yeah.
That tells you all you need to know. It's
Always.
not about Trump. You don't have to like Trump.
You don't have to like
There are a
him.
lot of other people in the party. There are a lot of, and as I said, if I ever meet your mom, I hope I do, because
I
I'd
hope
love to
so
meet
too.
you. I will point out to her how they did this. And one of the things, because this is your first time on my show, you are definitely coming back. But one of the things I point out to people is that I talk about the parts of the brain, and the parts of the brain that they direct this propaganda to doesn't have a filter on it. So if you keep exposing yourself to it, you're going to get indoctrinated,
Yes.
regardless of how smart you are.
Yes. Very.
So I have to be just as careful as anybody else not to get indoctrinated with this information.
Yes. And CNN is on all day long. My husband is part of the reason how I came into this arena, I guess. He used to, when we were dating, he used to listen to like YouTube and different things. And I used to say, "What are you listening to?" I used to think he was crazy. And during COVID, his dad used to watch MSNBC all day long. And he said that he was down there with him for a little bit. And my husband is very strong mentally. And he said, after a while of listening, to them go over and over, he goes, I started to feel myself getting depressed and falling for the propaganda. And he's like, oh no, I got to get out of here. And he like ran out of the basement. And he said to me, he goes, if someone like me can fall susceptible to something like that, then your average person, there's no hope. They're going to just, fall into the slump. And honestly, during COVID, I wasn't watching regular TV. There was no commercials. So I didn't have that playing in my head, but my sisters had to listen to it all day long. And they're like, every channel they would turn to is just the brainwashing, the brainwashing, the brainwashing. So you are completely right when you say you're listening to that over and over again. And no matter how mentally strong you are, at a certain point, you're going to break and be susceptible to it.
Because it's separate parts of the brain. So like with my Unmasking the Abuser program, I told you before the show that I have like the only real prevention program for domestic abuse and violence. And I can teach people from the age of about 13. And one of the things I teach them in a very basic way is how, just really simply, how the different parts of the brain work. So the part of our brain that is communicating, that's language based, problem solving, rational, logical, the part of my brain that has all that formal education is
Mhm.
completely separate from the emotional part of my brain, and is completely separate from the primal part of my brain where my fear responses, desire,
Mhm.
hunger, need to be part of a group, all different parts of the brain. So it doesn't matter how strong that front part is. You keep exposing those other parts of the brain, they have no filter. They base what they believe on how much they're exposed because they think they're helping us. We adapt to what we're exposed to. So if you continue to expose yourself to indoctrination, you will buy it no matter how, even if you don't like it. Even if the rational part of your brain is saying, I don't like this, you'll still find yourself making decisions, making choices, feeling discomfort because those other parts of your brain make the majority of your life choices. It's like I usually when you see this about the brain, they'll show, just think of it as conscious, unconscious, and subconscious. They always show like it shows like an iceberg where only a tiny little bit at the top is sticking above the water. That's your conscious mind. The rest of it is those other parts, and those are where your life choices come from. So when we are constantly barraged, this is why it's so dangerous to have schools and have an environment with left-wing propaganda where
Yeah.
no one else is ever allowed to get a fair hearing.
Hmm.
Because even if we don't even think we noticed it, our brain picks it up.
Your brain's picked it up.
So we have to do something about, we have to take our country back, and then we have to be part of a movement to take the Western world back from the left because they would see us completely destroyed.
Oh,
And
definitely.
throwing money at a problem is not the way to
It's
fix
not
it.
the, no, it's not.
I look at a lot of people that I talk to about in the domestic violence field, and they're all upset. Oh, Trump has cut a lot of funding. A lot of states have cut funding for domestic violence. They only cut the funding for the programs where they were doing interpretive dance or they were doing something that didn't work. I was like, this is reassuring to me because I'm all about proven results.
Yeah.
You want something that's actually going to work? You hire me. And I actually paid in Sydney. I was talking to the state government, and this is back in like 2017. I paid a financial analyst to figure out how much money my program would save if rolled out
Mhm.
statewide because of how I do it, teaching exact tactics. It also has an improved response aspect for professionals in every field. It would have cost less than $3 million to run statewide. It would have saved the state $27 million in the first year. So 3 versus 27 and wasteful spending. That's fiscal accountability.
Yeah.
And I faced so much discrimination at Stanford. One of the things that was beneficial about it, I had no wiggle room. Anything I said, I had to be able to back up with facts. And I'm still like that. So we need to keep people responsible for how they spend taxpayer money. So I want to just quickly ask you before we end, because I know we've run over, but I don't care. How do you differ from other candidates? If somebody quickly asked, I'm sure you get asked this a lot. What makes you different?
Do I get asked that a lot? I
Nobody
don't.
asks you that.
You know what? I don't think anyone's asked because once they hear the fact that I was, fired with, even though I had tenure, it kind of makes them say like, "Oh, okay, you have integrity. We understand." So I never had to really answer what makes me different. So this is the first time. So thank
I,
you.
I thought this was something you would get all the time because one of the things when you're out in a big market, one of the things you have to do is differentiate yourself. So I've learned how to quickly tell people how what I do differs from every other training program. And I'm going to, in a second, I'm going to show you what I do, my
Okay.
company. But I had to actually, because I use how the brain works and how it accepts information and how it embeds information instead of just PowerPoint slides that people learn and they're like, oh, that was great. And you go away and they never remember the information
Retain
at
the
all.
information. Yeah.
I'm completely different than that. We get interactive, we use humor, we use movement, we use tactics that have been found to really embed the information. And I come from a social psychologist's perspective, so I'm being very specific about what you need to know to stay safe. It's not general, it's very specific. So I get better results than the existing programs. This is how I'm different. So, how are you different from anybody else that's running for, or even the other Republicans running for city council in Brooklyn?
Well, the other Republicans, for the most part, we're a team because we don't have anyone backing us, right? So we're really grassroots style. We don't have this. We don't have the Democrat machine, and we don't actually have the Republican machine either. It's really just us, boots on the ground, speaking to individuals and actually going in the field and talking to the neighbors, knocking on doors and asking, what is it that you would like to see different in your community? What are you lacking? What resources do you need? And they all, whenever I meet someone, they're always like, they look at my poster and they're like, is this you? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, wow, we never actually meet the actual candidates. We just see whatever flyer. Whatever
See,
flyer.
this is how you're different. So from now on, when people say, how are you different? It's like, we are not same stuff, different day.
Yeah.
We
And so
are
they
on
like,
the
it happened
ground.
up until yesterday. He was looking and he looked and he looked and he's like, this is you. And I'm like, yes, it's me. I'm like, you don't see it in the glasses? And he's like, wow, I've never. He's like, I've never met. He goes like, she'll come around for photo ops, but she never actually comes and like rings doorbells and speaks with us. And I'm like, well, I'm here. I'm like, and I will continue to be here. My phone number is listed. You can literally call me on the phone. You can shoot me an email. I'm very available. I'm not high up on this pedestal where I'm above, like we're equal. We're in this together. So that's
well, see, that would differentiate you anyway. And that, in a way, they think being MAGA is an insult. I see it as a compliment because although I have to vote Republican because that's the only option, I see myself as a MAGA Republican because it isn't same stuff, different day. It is very much about accountability to the people. It's very much about improving society. It's not enriching my friends. There wasn't much difference between the Democrats and the Republicans when it came to all the backroom deals. I mean, look how much support Ukraine got. Ukraine is the center for human trafficking in Europe.
Yes, it is.
It's run by an incredibly corrupt guy who's underqualified for the job, and it's a total dictator. But they found a way to say, hey, if we supposedly send this money over here, we can actually, expand our offshore accounts without anybody looking. And it was Democrats and Republicans doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then MAGA came along, and Trump's not hiring anybody who thinks like that. He wants people who thinks like he does, which is your job is to serve the American people. It's not to make yourself get rich off the taxpayer with some backroom deal. Now, you can make good money as long as you come up with some kind of clever business idea.
Exactly.
But it's going to be out front, up front, and it's not going to be sleazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm proud of that. I think that we need more of that. And see, already boots on the ground talking to people, not the same political machine that they've always had.
Yeah.
That makes you different. So is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we finish?
I would like to share what we've been discussing, just actually paying attention and just listening to what people have to offer. Was that in the beginning when I spoke to you? Yes, it was when I said they put the MAGA sticker on my my signs, and I was like, oh yay, they noticed me. I'm like, now more people are going to research. Honestly, I left them there. I went out and I saw them and I left the stickers there because I said, you know what? I'm like, that's going to catch people's eye. And now they're going to say, well, who is this MAGA Republican? And I was like, so I'm leaving it right there. And as I was there were people driving by, and this the bus driver, he said, "Is that you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he just started honking his horn, and he was like, "Good for you." And I was like, "Thank you." And that was a black man, and I was like, "Thank you very much." It's not the same anymore. Things are changing, and
Thank goodness.
we need to continue to be hopeful. That would be my message, to continue to be hopeful. As long as there's breath in your body, that nothing is finite. There's always hope for tomorrow, and that's something that I always try to remember. And that's why I continue to keep fighting, why I'm doing this, running for office, something that's so I consider it to be so out of my personality to even be running for office and putting myself out there. But I have a daughter, and she's going to be 2 next month, and I need a better future for my child. And if all of us can think like that we need a better future for our children, then there isn't anything that we can accomplish, and we can, support each other and just listen to something different, because the same thing hasn't been working for us anyway. So what can you lose by trying something new?
Oh, but I am so appreciative of you being here. And as always, audience, if you're watching the recording, just put a comment or question below where you watched it. You can always, at the end, in a moment, I'll show you how to reach me on X. That's the easiest way to find me because that's where I get my news. Um, question or comment for Athena, I will shoot it through to her. I fully intend to have her on back again. So if you have something you're like, I'll talk to her next time, just let me know when she can be on. I'm going to bug her because I think, I just think you have so much to offer. Gosh, I don't live in Brooklyn now, but if I did, I would absolutely vote for you.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
Now, this is what I do, ethical strategic solutions. I take required training. So people have to get trained in, corporations like, oh, we need a domestic violence weekend, or we need anything, diversity training, or whatever it is. I take the science and I simplify it. I empower the training using what I know about how the brain works, tailor the fit to whoever's in the audience, and the results are measurably improved. So, if whether you're in the USA, Australia, or the UK, for me, I am so used to traveling, I don't even get jet lag. We can also do it online. So, contact us now. And I should also let you know that in the new year, I will be offering online classes, and I'm going to have both large classes open to anybody, and I'll have smaller classes where you'll have to pay the fees on everything are going to be very reasonable, but it'd be a slightly larger fee, but you will get personal interaction time with me. So another thing to contact me about, if you've watched a show and you like the topic and you're like, I want to learn more of that, let me know. And thank you all for joining me. Thank you, Ms. Clarke, for being here. As I said, I would vote for you. Absolutely. I love ration, logic, people orientation, all of the things you are bringing. Fantastic. Well done, you.
Thank
So
you.
please come back again. And thank you so much. And thank you, audience. And I will see you next Tuesday, where we're going to be talking more about the mind control, because mind control seems to be a really popular topic. We're going to do another aspect of mind control, putting you in charge, okay? So that other people are not able to take advantage of you. So hopefully I'll see you then. Have a good week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.